1. Race officer speaking.
Pressure coming here, pressure coming.
We're 1.5 below.
2 dives here, boys.
We're looking at 10.5 to 42.
Welcome back, podcast listeners, and a huge thank you for tuning in. It's great to have you here for this. It's the second part of our 2-part Olympic edition, a special edition of the podcast, an attempt to try and fill the void of the postponed Tokyo 2020 Games. I hope you all enjoyed part 1. If you've not had a listen, it won't hurt to stay with part 2 first, but do spin back a bit and take in part 1. It's a fascinating look at 3 very different Olympic gold medal stories. As mentioned in part 1, these podcasts are a little longer than normal, but we've included chapter markers at the start of each interview, so you can jump in and out as you wish. Do let us know what you think. As ever, your comments and ratings are important, so please do get in touch and let us know your thoughts on the interviews. It's been a great podcast to make this month. As you all know, Olympic sailing is very much my background. I dedicated a large part of my life to competing at 4 Olympic Games and have very fond memories of my time as an athlete. But the Olympics isn't all about success, as you will have heard from Tom Slingsby in part 1. A failure to perform can also be a vital part of the Olympic journey. The lows in Olympic competition can be very low indeed, but the search for Olympic success also often reveals great stories of tenacity, dedication, and sheer determination to overcome. And that's where we're going to kick things off in this edition, with a man who is without doubt one of the most asked for interviews on this podcast. It's an emotional tale, a roller coaster of Olympic emotion. I hope you enjoy the time I spent with the sailing Olympians.
At that time, a bronze medal was like a gold medal for me. We grabbed the last spot by 1 point. All my coaches said that I was crazy when I told them that I am back into the Nacra.
In 2012, it was announced that the Nacra 17 would become the new mixed double-handed multi-hull for the Rio 2016 Games. A sporty, fast, performance catamaran. The choice of the Nacra was to reflect the direction elite-level sailing was heading, and was a choice made to attract the interest of the new foiling generation. But its selection also piqued the interest of Santi Lange, a former tornado sailor from Argentina, a double Olympic bronze medalist, who had by then sailed at 5 different Olympic Games. In his mid-50s and looking for Olympic inspiration, he teamed up with Argentinian laser Olympian Sisi Carenza Soroli and embarked on a journey that neither of them could have possibly predicted. We interviewed Santi remotely from his training base over in Punta Ala, Italy, and kicked things off by asking him about his immediate reaction to the news of the postponement of Tokyo 2020.
Immediately, I didn't really had any feelings, okay. But I must say that the week later, I said, wow, this is going to be tough. I was preparing my year after Tokyo. I am building my own cruising boat to go around. I was planning to go surfing in Brazil for a while and get out of hard work. And suddenly I said, well, 1 more year. Then same for Ceci, she has a girlfriend and was ready to have a family, and all in all, we had different plans, and now we have to replan. My feeling was like if I was running a marathon and they tell you, okay, now you have to run for 10 kilometers more. And the whole planning of it, I start thinking, okay, do we have, we've been pushing really hard the last 3 months of this year, and now are we going to do we have to have a little drop and a little rest, or we must continue hard? And that's the right time, that is very hard to answer that question. And I'm still questioning that question, when, if we can still push this hard for so long. But at the end, it came all together, and I am really happy that we are back here in Italy training really hard. We have a really good training partners with the Italian team and John Gibson and Anna Burnett from England and the Austrian team. So we are really enjoying this time here in Italy and to be back at it.
Santi, this month we're chatting all things Olympic Games, and you've been to a whopping 6 in total. But I was wondering what your first Olympic memory was.
It is a really good memory. For us from Argentina, was at my age when I was young, was really kind of an impossible to go to the Olympics. We won the trials in Argentina, and then we had no money to go to the Olympics, and we managed at the end, and we borrowed a boat from the British team, and we borrowed sails from Costeki in America, and we arrived like 3 or 4 days before the games or less, and we only done one international regatta, and that was all our campaign. And we got there to Korea, and it was really strong winds, and we were 3 guys really light. I was 73 kilos, and the middleman was 75, and then the bowman was 70 on a soling, and it was kind of impossible. But we managed without any pressure. We had no pressure at all, and you know, we won one race. Back then was only 7 races, so we were really happy about that, and we finished 9th, which was a good result for what we had. And personally, I had like, okay, we need to really get the organization and the money and the funding to try to have the tools to compete against the strong teams. And it took me a while to do it, but we worked a long way to get it, and then was afterwards many games more.
Yeah, you learned a lot there. Well, by the time you got to Athens in 2004, you'd been to 3 games and walked away empty-handed. Athens, though, was different for you and your crew, Carlos Espinola. You were real contenders by now, and you secured the bronze medal. What had you done differently by Athens?
I think my biggest mistake was to go to Atlanta in the laser, because I only went to the laser because it was a cheap class, was the introduction of the laser as a easy, being able for poor countries or less powerful countries to get into the Olympic Games. And I started sailing in the laser when I was 33 years old, 73 kilos, and you know, I didn't have any experience. And so then I was late, and then I swapped to catamarans, and then obviously I was late for Sydney because we only campaigned for 1 year. And this is the time that we go again in the same boat that we had experienced, and I teamed up with Carlos Espinola that already had 2 medals, and he was an outstanding crew, outstanding mate, and really, you know, I can only say good things about him and the team we made together. And you know, he put into the team, he gave me the self-confidence to the team that we were going to be, as you say, you know, have a chance to a medal. And I think that I had a lot of pressure because all the media in Argentina was not very happy of getting Carlos out of the windsurf and sailing a normal boat. But we trained together. When I was in the laser, he was training for the windsurf, and we were really good mates in the gym and training together. So we really wanted to do it together. So all the pressure was on me, because if we didn't win a medal, was certainly going to be my fault, and was a night pressure. And I had a lot of help from Carlos to get it along.
So many Olympic sailors, Santi, they go to the Olympics time after time and they never medal. I mean, I'm just curious about, you know, how much of a relief was it to actually stand on the podium?
Unbelievable. Was an enormous relief. You know, I tried to go to the Olympics in 1980, you know, and then 88 was my first Olympic. I tried also for Los Angeles. So it was a long road, And then when we started with Carlos, was a financial crisis in Argentina in 2001, and then wow, seems like the mountain was getting too steep for us, and then we managed to overcome that. And as you said, we started the games, being world champions. We won the European championship, and we were number one in the ranking. So we were very, very confident. So it was a really big, enormous relief to have any medals. Obviously, I've been always a little bit frustrated that we never got the gold with Carlos. But at that time, a bronze medal was like a gold medal for me.
Well, you came back with Carlos, didn't you, 4 years later in China? Another bronze in a really tricky venue. And it was to be the finale for the Tornado class. And I wonder if you thought it was also perhaps going to be your last chance in the Olympic world.
Oh, for sure, definitely. I thought that was my retirement. That was my last chance. Was another really cool campaign, because after Athens, Carlos wanted to retire. And back then we were teaming up with Roman Nacra and Hans-Peter Steinacher. And both of them, they wanted to retire as well from Olympic sailing. And I told them to to continue. I was pushing both of them to continue. And I managed to convince them by saying, okay, we are such a good team that we can do it in 1 year. So Carlos went off to do some other thing. He's a politician right now, and went to work. And I went to the America's Cup in Valencia. And then we meet up with Carlos only 10 days before Cascais. That was the final opportunity to qualify to the games. And we grabbed the last spot by 1 point. And since then was a full-on year that was really, wasn't, when I look backwards, it was an amazing year. We pushed so hard in years. Olympic week, that is normally end of April, we finished nearly last. We were completely out of pace with the design of the sails. And since then we worked hard to get into good speed. And then we got the bronze. That was another really good prize, because we were so far behind when we were very close to the games.
The sport really had a massive push, didn't it, to reflect the way that that the sport was developing. Fast foiling, multi-hulls. I mean, the Nacra 17 was chosen to debut in Rio, I guess to encourage young sailing talent. At what point, Santi, did it pique your interest? When did you start to consider that this might be for you?
Well, it was a huge learning experience. How I got back into the Olympics. Ceci came to my house for some advice. She was a laser sailor in Beijing as well, and she swapped to the Nacra 17 for the reason you just mentioned, and to improve her sailing skill. He broke up with his mate. And I just came back from San Francisco for working from Artemis. And then during the conversation, I asked Ceci why she wouldn't sail with me. And Ceci never answered that question. And I was getting a little bit frustrated, because I thought she thought I was too old to get back into the Nacra or something like that. Then I wrote her an email and said, Ceci, what I propose you is for sure, is honest. And basically, it's one of my decisions I took in life that I didn't think of. I didn't think if Ceci was the right mate for me, if we were going to get along, or if it was the right time to get back to the Olympics. Actually, all my coaches said that I was crazy when I told them that I am back into the Nacra. And not a single person support me on my decision. Everyone, you're too old to get back into the Olympics. You are doing well in professional sailing. Why to go back to put money into the sport instead of getting money out of the sport? But somehow it came from my heart, and it's a true story. I just did it because I just wanted to do it. There was no true, no plans, nothing. I just wanted to do it. And it came off the way it came, and it was, till now, I really, any decision I take on my life, I go back to that decision. I just do whatever I want, and came the right way.
I've walked around the Nacra dinghy park often, Santi. I mean, they're young. What did they make of you? How did they respond to you being around?
I don't know. That's a question for them, but I feel really comfortable. Like I really love it. For me, it's a big motivation to be in the boat park with young people, and for me, it's an opportunity to learn and to see new ways of approaching the sailing. And certainly there is many ways. Like now, for me here we are sailing with Tita Ruggiero Tita, and he moves so well in the boat. And Ceci has to do a lot of job that no other crew has to do because I am too slow. And it is a really push for me because I need to get try to do things differently, because obviously I don't go under the boom as quick as they are doing. So I need to be smoother on the rudder, on the rate of turn in the jibes or tacks, try to get an advantage somewhere else, because for sure they are going to be faster around the boat. I was in really bad shape. I couldn't even get into the boat. I couldn't imagine being a high performance sport with 75% left of one lung.
Well, with not much of a run-up, in 2014, at the age of 52, I'm thinking, you and Ceci were silver medalists at the World Championships in Santander. Were you surprised at how competitive you were so quickly?
No, not really, because, I thought we had the experience of catamaran sailing. There were a lot of new teams that didn't have the experience we had in catamaran sailing, and I thought back then that we had an advantage, by the level in the Tornado class was really high in terms of catamaran sailing. You got the people like Roman Agara or Mitch Booth, and all the teammates, obviously, and Darren Bandock and Glenn Ashby. The level, when you see the names, the level was very high in terms of catamaran and fast boat sailing. So when I went to the Nacra, there were obviously a lot of new people into this world, younger, but I thought our experience was good to match them.
You were doing well on the racetrack, but Santi, you were struggling. The pace of training and traveling, I mean, you thought it was really taking its toll on your health. Tell us when and how you realized that something wasn't quite right.
Well, in 2014, I had a lot of work to do in big boats, in the TP52 and the Soto 40 back in South America. So I already pushed a little bit that year, because when we decided with Ceci to campaign the Nacra, I couldn't cancel all the things that I had in terms of professional sailing. And so it was a hard year. And the problem was that every time I take a plane, I will get ill. And I did a lot of regattas under, taking any sort of medicine I could find to be able to race. And then we did a really good training camp in Brazil in the summer, in South American summer, and we came back really for 2015 winning to do well in the circuit. And then when we arrived to Sofia, immediately I got ill again. And we did the Sofia Trophy. I was in really bad shape. I couldn't even get into the boat, and we finished really bad. And then I realized exactly what you say, that the health, my body was telling me something that. And then I said to Ceci and our team, I need to stop sailing and take care of this. And then it took me a while to find the nodule. It took several visits to different doctors to trying to find the reason why I was getting ill. And then it came out that was a nodule in my left lung, and then I took care of that. It took me a while to decide to get surgery. Actually, I canceled one surgery, like 4 days to go into hospital, because I was not sure of getting surgery. And it took me like 6 months fighting against the doctors to all the doctors fighting against me to convince me to get surgery. But they done it. They managed, and they were obviously right. But I wanted to make sure that before I go into the surgery, I was sure it was the right move. And yes, and then I did it in September 2015.
Why were you so reluctant, and what was the prognosis, Santi?
Well, it was a nodule that the doctors were certain that was a bad one, but there was still a percentage that could be a good one. And I thought, my main concern was to do my lifestyle. I like to go surfing, I like to go bike ride, I like to do sports. I am an outdoor man, and I thought if they were going to remove my lung, I was not going to be able to do it anymore. And so basically that was my concern, and I thought it was easy for a doctor to take you. They believe they save your life, but my life is to be outside doing things. And I was not, I wanted to make sure if there's a chance that I could not get surgery, I wanted to pull that string as much as possible. But then it was a time that they say that the risk was enormous, and then obviously I took the decision to get surgery. And also they were right in saying that even if I get surgery, I will be good enough to do sports again, which I didn't believe as well. I couldn't imagine being a high performance sport with 75% left of one lung, and they were right. Actually now I do in my normal life as if I wouldn't have surgery.
The Nacra is pretty fast-paced and athletic. I mean, how did you come back after that massive surgery? How did that work?
For sure, the team had a lot to do, and the team was incredible, supportive, and we all of us pushed really hard to put it back together. Matteo, Ceci, and also I must say my sons that were campaigning the 49er, and Theo and Borja, my other two sons that are more artists. They all, Theo and Borja came to Barcelona to train with me and do all the recovery on the bike together. And the support of the friends, my family was so big. And then I think it was such an incredible story, in the sense that we worked so hard as a team. We went to leave it to Rio de Janeiro, and we trained like incredible hard. And I cannot have a better memory than when we put it back together, like in June 2016. We say, okay, we are up here again, and that meld the teams together with such a big confidence that I think when I see now the medal race, every time I see it, I think it has a lot to do with what we lived before. We were ready to fight whatever together, and we were strong all the time mentally, I think.
How much did your illness shape that final run into the games?
For me, a lot. For me, it was a fundamental. It's difficult how to put it in words, but I question myself that if we would have won the games without my illness. It's like you say, well, if everything would have been easier or normal, maybe we wouldn't have won. But the fact that we were, deep in trouble in September 2015, make us, I think, as a team, we didn't complain about anything that was not important. We was impossible to get into any discussion with Ceci or with Matteo or with anything. We had it to be together, and something special happened that make us so strong and work so hard. And I think it's because we leave something too hard to discuss about stupid things.
You had a consistent regatta. I mean, not winning every race, but definitely stringing it all together, and went into that final medal race in #1 spot. Just tell us, if you can remember, the scenario. What was the numbers going into that race?
I think we were 7 points ahead of the second boat. and then there was a lot of boats. I think up to 7 boats has chance to medal, and we could lose any medals, no problem, if we would do a bad regatta, bad race. And the night before, we decided that the plan was to just go and do a good race. Don't change what we've been doing till then. We thought we were sailing good, and we just need to do a good race. And my only quick memory was if we were going to be top 3, we would be gold medal for sure, and top 6, we medal for sure. And that was my only game plan, to try to be top 3, to make sure no matter how the rest of the people do, we will grab the gold.
We were watching on the sidelines, and I can tell you it was truly nail-biting race. I mean, you had a couple of unforced errors, and watching it unfold really felt like you'd thrown it all away. How was it on board? What's your lasting memory of that race?
I am so proud of how we prepared for that race, that I think we were so calm. We never, the first penalty, it was a mistake of the umpires, and they say sorry to us afterwards. And we were, very well how it feels when you are in a medal race and you have a penalty at the start. It's the people see smiles away, because the race is so short that it's no chance. But obviously, inside Rio is such an interesting course and so difficult that we knew there were going to be opportunities, and we have to stay calm and focus. And that's exactly what we did. We were really focused and trying to sail the boat fast, going the right way. And that's my memory. That's why when we finished, I had no clue what had happened. We were so focused on just doing what we had to do in every single moment right, that I didn't feel the race. I was focused on the moment and every decision. And when I finished, I thought we had lost everything, because I had in my mind we need to get back to third, and that's why I personally made that stupid mistake in the top mark, because we were already gold by going behind the Austrians, and that was it. And I tacked too close, and because I tried to force it because I wanted to be third, and that was a very stupid mistake, I must say.
If anyone has seen the images of you and Ceci after you actually were told that you'd won,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll know it's a really special moment. I can't watch it without a tear in my eye. I mean, at the age of 54, after 6 Olympics, a lifetime in the sport, and with only a year to go, having to fight cancer, despite the odds, you had done it. How emotional was that very moment, still on the boat?
I have to answer the same as before, relief. Somehow, was a relief to finally get the gold medal. It was a huge, I must say, a peace as well, and happiness, the definition of happiness. I cannot find, in sports for sure, a more happy moment than that one. And we were also lucky enough that this is what people haven't seen, that Brazil is close to Argentina, so my mother was there. My brothers brought it for the final race, and she was 85 or 86 and was there in the beach together with all my sons and all my brothers and plenty of friends. They fly to see the final race, so it was an incredible atmosphere. All the family of Ceci was there, so it was just an incredible moment. And then my son swam. They asked Nathan Aldridge to then rig the 49er from them, and they rushed into sea, and they managed to see the last bit and swam into the boat. And it was just crazy, just out there, just incredible moment.
There was not a dry eye on the beach in Rio when you stood on the podium with Ceci. I mean, an almost filmic end. When you look back on it all now, Santi, I mean, can you believe that it all happened, that it all came good?
Yes, somehow I felt it different, because in a certain way I always at the beginning, I said, okay, this is time to really fight for it. After the surgery, I said, okay, this is an opportunity to really fight and get back into it. And then when it happened, we, before it happened, before the games, we knew we had a chance. We were confident. The whole team was confident that we were back. And so we live it in a different way. I live it on the way that, okay, we have to fight, and then we had it, and obviously it was so cool to have it, and very special, obviously. But I never saw it in another way than that a sport opportunity and a sport fight.
Well, Santi, next year when you go to Tokyo, you'll be nearly 60, and you will have spent a lifetime in the very special Olympic world. I mean, when you look back on it all, just what has it given you? How special has it all been?
Well, in Tokyo, hopefully I will be a grandpa. One of my sons is expecting a baby for December, so that is going to be even worse. Yeah, so I'm so happy with that, and will be so special to be in the Olympics being a grandpa. But yes, it's as I said, going back to this special decision that somehow life put to me to take decision of what I really like. And that's why I went to Rio, and it's the same reason after that learning process. This is the same reason why I go to Tokyo, because I just realized that this is what I love the most to do. I just enjoy to be here sailing with top teams and that are right now better than us, and trying to discover how we can improve. And wake up every morning to see how we can get to Tokyo in the best shape we can. And I just love it. Every single day I love it. And this is a reason. And obviously we want to be in Tokyo in good shape. And if we win, we win. And if we don't win, I hope we had a really good 4-year cycle, now 5-year cycle that we've been enjoying trying to get there.
Well, Santi, it's been great to catch up. You're an inspiration, as always, especially to someone in their 50s. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Santiago Lange, 6 times Olympian, 2 times bronze medalist in the tornado class, and the Rio Nacra 17 Olympic champion. Santi's medal race in Rio was exhausting to watch. I can't tell you how popular a winner he was in the boat park at the Games. He's an inspirational character. Sailing's history in the Olympic Games is a long one. In 1900, which was only the second staging of the modern Summer Olympics, 8 classes were contested on the River Seine and off the French port of Le Havre. In fact, it was at these games that Swiss sailor Helene de Portel became the first woman to win a gold medal, sailing in the 1 to 2 ton class. However, it does not reflect well on the modern Olympic movement that it then took 88 years, yes, you heard that right, until the Korea Games of 1988, until sailing could boast a dedicated women's sailing class. I was well on my way to forging a career in sport by then, and it astonishes me that it took that long for the 470 class to become the first dedicated women's class at the Games. But that's how it panned out. And our next interview is with the winner of that very 470 regatta, the inspirational Lynne Jewel, who along with Helm Alison Jolly sailed to the very first women's Olympic sailing medal. We interviewed Lynne remotely, and I have to say it was an absolute pleasure to chat to her. I cannot believe it has taken the pair of us so long to catch up. Well, thanks for joining us, Lynne, on the Special Olympic podcast. I'm so excited to finally kind of meet you. As an ambitious 18-year-old sailor growing up in Scotland, watching the first dedicated women's medal play out at the Seoul Games in '88. It was a massive, massive deal. So a huge warm welcome to the pod.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Lynne, when you heard there was going to be a dedicated medal for women, I mean, can you remember your initial reaction?
I remembered that they were going to be working on putting women in the Olympics. And at the time, I was volunteering with U.S. Sailing on some of the women's committees. And they said they were going to be moving in that direction. So I knew right then and there I wanted to be a part of that history. So I just started gearing up in that. And I was gearing up more as a skipper than a crew at the time. So
how well placed were you? You know, how much was it, the right time at the right place to take it on?
Well, I knew when I was a little girl I wanted to go to the Olympics. It was just a matter of what sport I was going to be going in. I was involved in track and field, volleyball, softball, a lot of different sports because I grew up in California. So it was a matter of what sport gave me that road. And actually, it was coming down to track and field and then sailing. And then eventually, sailing brought more doors open than track and field.
What was the landscape for women's racing then? What did it look like?
The landscape, there wasn't any specific events for women. When women wanted to go sailing, it usually was co-ed. You'd race against the men. And I am not opposed to racing against the men because I felt that in some ways they really elevated us to work a little bit harder and stronger, if you will. Yeah, that's how that landscape was. It was you went when you signed up for an event, it was co-ed.
I mean, how did you and Alison prepare? What was your setup like? And with no previous Olympic experience, how did you prioritize what would actually make the difference?
That's a great question. I think, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to Bill Shore. I think if I hadn't met Bill Shore and didn't start dating him, we would not have gotten the focus that we needed to go in that direction, to be honest. He's the one that sort of looked at us and said, listen, if you want to get to where you want to go, there are a lot of things that you guys need to do because you're nowhere near where you need to be. And he was the one, along with Allison's husband, that sat down and basically wrote up things that were basic things that we needed to work on, and then some unorthodox ways of sailing and preparing us mentally, and also, at the time of the moment, like how are you going to respond to this quickly, that kind of thing. So, they were the ones that guided our ship. It wasn't us that just came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh, we got the idea." We were fortunate to have people finally say, you guys are talented, we just need to shape you a little bit better.
Lynne and Helm Allison embarked on a rigorous and intense training regime that saw them spend 4 hours each day in the gym, followed by 4 hours or more out on the water. They purposefully sailed endless sessions in the toughest, most challenging conditions they could find. But it's Lynne's story about training in Florida that's most extraordinary. Remember, 2 women out training in a 470 dinghy.
The good news was we were the fastest boat out there, and there was the perfect storm. There was the big breeze that came down, and the current came in probably a mile off the coast of Florida. Usually it's a few miles out. So anyways, believe it or not, the conditions were almost identical to Korea. And so we were all excited and we were doing really well. And I've never felt such an adrenaline rush because it was the first time the lights went on for both of us. Like, we can really do this. And everything that we put into this, we're kicking ass. We're killing the boys and the women. Downside is when we turned around, we're the first one out of the gate. Now you're the last one because everybody's going back in. And that was the time that we hit a rogue wave and the rudder snapped off and the boat tumbled, filled with water. So to make a long story short, we were awash. And so we took the sails down and we were out there for a long time, but a shark came up. We almost got hit by a tanker coming out of Fort Lauderdale. We didn't realize how bad the current was running because you could look at the land and anyways, a fisher boat, it was around 5:30, I think. A fishing boat came by and it was about I don't know, football field or so away from us. I kept whistling to the point where I thought I was going to pass out. We put our sails overboard like a sea anchor to slow ourselves down. We figured out, okay, how much water I had on board, how much food, the whole 9 yards. And the fishing boat kept going by. And it was the most god-awful feeling because you thought, yay, we're rescued. And then it's adios, muchachos. And finally, he started making a turn and he came back and he found us. He had bottle thick lenses. He goes, you girls need some help? No, we're just out here for the fun of it. We just, it's like, oh my God, we were so excited. So anyways, it took several hours to come in, but we were 15 miles up the coast and about 15, 20 out to sea. Oh yeah, it was bad. And Corey, I guess apparently went to the bar and said, has anyone seen Lynne or Allison? Because it's dark. And sure enough, no one knew where we were, so they ended up sending the Coast Guard out looking for us. So that's my story, but we had no time to process it because our trials were in July and we had so much more to do that, when we came to the trials, it was like no one could rock our world because we've already had our world rocked. So that was, but I will tell you this, after 10 years, both Alice and I were talking one time and I said, Allie, I went to go see that movie, Perfect Storm. And she said, oh, I went to say, I had a panic attack. I seriously had a panic attack. And so I went to go see the doctor and they says, no, that's PTSD. You guys have submerged it so long that that's what it was. And we both had it much later on because we had suppressed it. I was like, okay, now I know what my problem is.
Oh my goodness, the Olympics would be a doddle after that.
Yeah. So
now, Lynne, let's get to career. I mean, I'm curious about, I guess, the reaction of the male sailors. I mean, for years, no specific women's class, and there you were, 42 sailors in the Olympic boat park. What did the male sailors make of all that?
I don't think they made anything of it. I think everybody was so focused on what they had to do and their competitors. I mean, I didn't really spend much time thinking about the men, and I don't think the men really thought about us when we were sailing. It was just another event.
The conditions, though, were brutal, weren't they? Wind over tide, big wind, big waves. What's your memories of the racing? How tough was it?
I cannot, let's just put it this way. There's a lot of footage out there. I can't watch the footage. I look at it and I go, what the heck were we doing out there? I mean, it really was pretty dangerous conditions. I mean, one of the dangerous days, they finally, the Koreans finally asked all the coaches to get out on the water and coach boats because they didn't have enough, patrols. And that was the day that Korean 470 sailor went over, and then Larry Lemieux rescued him, and he won the Medal of Honor. I mean, it was. I mean, if you ever look at the footage, they had PT boats or those big army boats. Those big boats were turned into the current, not into the wind. That's how crazy it was. And just before you came down to the mark, you'd be all trimmed in because as soon as you turned the helm, you just got swept right up like an elevator. I mean, it was crazy. So there was a lot of timing as to, what you can and can't do. But the waves were pretty crazy, and
My goodness, it sounds epic. I mean, I was going to ask you actually about the standard of the fleet, given it was the first real opportunity for women to sail, at a professional kind of level. How did that look? What was the standard?
I think there were about, I'm going to say probably maybe 50% of the fleet were really good, and then there was a kind of a soft area, and then there was, the bottom half that, God bless them. They trained hard the best they can with their countries, and they were there, but it was a struggle for them. But I went there feeling very comfortable and confident that we have done everything we can to be prepared for this moment. And the first race of the Olympic Games was identical to the first race of our Olympic trials. And I turned to Allison when we crossed the line. I said, we're winning this. We are winning this. This is no question, hands down, we're winning this. I said, that was like deja vu. And if that wasn't deja vu, I don't know what was, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to suck it up, and we're winning this. And she goes, okay, we're going to do it. That was it. It was weird. It was so weird that it was so identical. I mean, it was scary. It was like being in a movie and watching it over again, but in a different arena. This blast hit us, and all the boats around us capsized. It was like going to Disneyland and being on the biggest ride of your life. I heard boats were crashing around. Yeah, that was us.
Lynne, your series got off to a commanding start. Were you surprised, I guess, that it was all beginning to come together?
It's interesting. I was not surprised. We were in the zone. When people say that, you always go, oh, yeah, what the heck is that? We had blinders on, and Andy Kosnecki and Bill and Allison's husband made sure that we were keeping our focus. So we had a set routine. We went out there. If there was something coming up, at least our head was out of the boat. We could talk about it. We didn't have to worry about the mechanics. We didn't sweat it out that, oh my God, the next puff is going to come and what do we do? It was more of, this is a real chess game now, and we've got our heads moving in the right direction.
Well, by the last race, I think you only had to finish in the top 14, which sounds easy. Just run through that day for us. What do you remember of it?
That was a tough day. I was walking to the boat, and the first thing I did was I came across Mark Reynolds, who was sitting on his star, rolling a piece of line on his star, debating whether or not he should change this line out because it was frayed. And I said, it's only one race, just change it. What do you got to lose? And he just sat there and he was thinking about it. Then I went to my boat, and there was my brother, who was looking at the wire on the jib halyard, saying that a couple of the strands had broken. And Allison's husband said, no, it'll be fine, whatever. And I said, well, I don't know why we can't change it. And Mark's job was to take care of the boat and everything. And so my brother backed off. I said, okay, well, if you say so. So sure enough, we went out, we raced it, and we decided that we were going to start last, because we didn't want to get into any trouble. And while we were out there, it was probably one of the lightest days. It was, 12:15 maybe, and we were deciding on where the rig should be. And we finally aired on more heavy than light, and we started, and we rounded the mark, I want to say mid-teens. We were like, okay, we knew where all the players were, and we were on the first reach when I felt something, and I looked over my shoulder and I threw the pole forward. I said, Allison, hang on. And this blast hit us, and all the boats around us capsized, and the wind went from 12 knots to 35 knots. just like that. It was just, I've never had any experience of that before. So we actually got to the jibe mark and we were doing fine. We got down to the mark. I think we were in third or fourth place, and we went up over a rogue wave and snapped the jib wire broke. And that was probably the first time the two of us debated for a long period of time to figure out how we were going to resolve it. We thought, well, it's so windy, maybe it will stay up. No, that doesn't happen. Should we capsize the boat? Then we said, well, how are we going to drop the rig? And these waves are crashing over us. So anyways, after a long debate, we finally went broadside to the waves, and we did pull the jib down. I think it was my shoelace or a piece of string somewhere. I tied it up. We got it up. We kept going, and it was white water everywhere. And Allie said, "Where do you think we are?" And I said, I think we're in deep trouble. I won't say what I said, but so I don't know what the front of the pack did, but the middle and the back of the pack did not have any spinnakers up at all. So we threw the kite up, and it was, like going to Disneyland and being on the biggest ride of your life. We were sitting on the back of the transom, white water everywhere. Allison was holding on to the regular tiller with almost both hands because the vibration. And we went by Mexico, Singapore. Like, we knew we were in trouble. We rounded the mark and we just sailed as fast as we can. It wasn't until we were coming up to the near the finish line that I saw the Russians coming out of the left side. And I said, Allie, I think we're fine. And we kept sailing, and I felt sick to my stomach, and so did Allison. And she goes, I don't know what we did. I mean, did we win? Did we not? I'm like, I'm pretty sure we won. No, I don't know. And then we were both mentally and physically exhausted. Most people, like I saw you and I saw other people, they cheer, they jump off the boat and stuff. At that point, it was like, I just want to go home. That's kind of how we felt. We're like, I'm tired. I want to go home now. I'm just like, that was just too much. When we came in, that's when I saw Mark Reynolds' mask down. And that's when I found out he didn't change his line. And I felt even further sick to my stomach because I told Allison what had happened. And it was sad because we knew going out that Mark Reynolds and us would probably be the two gold medalists, and then not have him be a gold medalist. I mean, he won a medal, and I know the Brits won the gold medal. And congratulations and all, but the finish wasn't as exciting as what I see you guys have done, like bringing the flag in and all that kind of stuff. This was more of, my God, I'm glad I'm alive. I'm glad we did it. Don't want to go through that again. So we couldn't breathe. We were like, that was the last race. Okay. All right. What just happened? Like, it was weird. It was like somebody had pulled our blinders off and said, okay, welcome back to the real world. It was fun standing on the podium, though.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. I mean, what was it like on the top step, the two of you, the stars and stripes going up the flagpole?
I had always dreamt of standing on that top step ever since I was a little girl. And it was very surreal because when they had it at night. So the flagpole was off in the distance with a light beaming on it, and it was just very surreal. So everything was black around you, and all you saw was the flag. Yeah, it was really surreal. It was fabulous.
And a special moment, I guess, to share with Allison. You'd been through a lot.
Oh, we have. We've been through a lot of different things. Allison got sick this past couple of last February. She had stage 4 cancer. And that to me just broke my heart. She's doing well now, but when you've been through something with somebody for such a long time, and some of the stuff we went through, it was just horrifying. That that took my breath away. But she's doing good, so that's all good stuff. I'm sorry. It's like your sister,
That's
you know?
all right.
Well, you had two of them when you were in the Yingling with the Sarahs, right?
Yeah, it's a special
It is a
moment to
special
share,
bond.
for sure. I mean, and you mentioned Mark Reynolds. Famously, his mask broke in that last race, and he didn't win gold. But it was a massive surprise, wasn't it? How poorly the US men performed. I mean, you and Alison delivered the only gold medal. How was that received in the team? What was the feeling in the team?
I think the team, that's a great question because I don't remember. I remember some, but I don't remember all. I mean, that Allison may know more about it than I do. I remember feeling horrible for Mark and Hal. But I also felt that the whole team in general, we medaled. We got a lot of different medals. It may not have been all gold or anything, but I think out of all the disciplines, I think it was only 2 that we didn't medal in. I think it was I know the FD and I think the Finn. So we did pretty well considering, what had gone on. I just felt I felt bad for someone that close to a gold. And John Kostecki had a chance for a gold, and he was racing his nemesis from Germany. And I mean, the two of them fight back and forth, and it's just whose day was the day, So
What was it like when you got back home? I mean, describe the celebrations.
it was a bit of a whirlwind when we got back home. I think Allison went off to a regatta right afterwards, and I came home. I remember I do remember this. We came back to Rhode Island, and I thought we were going home, and instead we stopped off at New York Yacht Club, and a friend of Bill's had a bunch of people there, and we celebrated, and and that was really exciting. And there were a lot of different little celebrations around. I mean, I grew up in the summertime in Plymouth Yacht Club. They had a big parade, and I talked to the school kids and things like that. It was fun. It was, I really enjoyed meeting the other athletes, but, to be able to, talk to a lot of the other different athletes that were on the team that won medals and how they, they'd say, "Oh, what sport are you? Sailing." Oh, okay. Yes, we know swimming. Yes, we know track and field, but oh, weren't you guys the ones down on the other end? I heard boats were crashing around. Yeah, that was us. Yeah, that was us.
That's funny.
So,
I mean, Lynne, what did winning that gold medal mean to Lynne Jewel?
personally, it meant a lot to me. It was a goal that I had set out that I've always wanted to do as a little girl, and I could visualize it. I could see it. I just wasn't sure what sport it was going to be in, but then to have it in sailing just meant the world to me. And so, yeah.
I mean, did you feel like you'd been trailblazers? How much did it feel like, the beginning of change?
Well, when I got back, I just there were 2 things. Both Allie and I decided that we wanted some family time, and we also wanted to have children. So that was something that we did. And at the time that I was doing that, I also decided to give back to the sport, and I worked with a couple other principal people on developing the junior women's single-handed sailing, and then the junior women's double-handed sailing, which is still going on today. So that was kind of like I wanted to give back to the sport. And that to me was, I did something. The gold medal to me is something I did for the country and for myself, but I also wanted to give back so that other people had that ladder, if you will, to be able to grow and go into that if they wanted to. I'm hoping that's what that did, but I think it's helped a lot of young sailors to get to where they want to go. So,
Well, Lynne, it certainly felt to me like you were a trailblazer. You opened the gates to a whole generation of women to, I guess, approach it in a real professional manner. And it's been so fabulous to hear your story. I could listen to you all night. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And hey, anytime you come this way, give a call.
Lynne Jewel Shore, Olympic gold medalist in the 470 class, Korea 1988, and the first woman to stand atop the Olympic podium of a dedicated women's sailing class. An inspirational woman with a fantastic approach to life. Throughout this edition of the podcast, several of our interviewees have gone on to represent at the highest level of the sport in other areas. Santi Lange with Team Artemis Racing at the America's Cup. Rodney Patterson sailed for Peter de Savry's 1983 America's Cup team. And Tom Slingsby, of course, went from gold in 2012 to America's Cup victory in 2013 with Oracle Team USA. Just like a cup campaign, an Olympic campaign is all-consuming. It requires a very different approach, of course, but both require dedication, faultless attention to detail and focus, which is why our final interviewee has a unique story all of his own. While Tom Slingsby was preparing to defend the Cup with Oracle in San Francisco 2013, a team of young New Zealanders swept to a solid victory in the Youth America's Cup, held just before the main event. Two of them were fresh from a silver medal in the 49er at the 2012 Games in London. Since then, Pete Burling and Blair Tuke haven't been out of the competitive sailing limelight. Brought in to head up New Zealand's 2017 America's Cup campaign, they simultaneously pushed forward with plans to go one better on the Olympic racecourse in Rio. What followed was a remarkable string of results. After losing to the Australian 49er team of Outridge and Jensen in London, Pete and Blair didn't lose another regatta. They won 4 consecutive world titles and posted the biggest points win in Olympic sailing history to win gold in Rio. And then went on to win the America's Cup a year later with Emirates Team New Zealand. We caught up with Blair at home in Auckland, busy preparing for the defence of the Cup. Their Olympic campaign, of course, now on hold until 2021.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's been a good day for me here. We've been pretty busy in meetings with Team NZ. It's been a busy sailing block for us, so just a bit of catch-up mode. But good day to be on shore, actually. Pretty wild weather here, so tucked up, winter time. And yeah, no, all good, thank you.
Well, we'll get straight into it. As you know, we're chatting all things Olympic Games this month. We're recording this mid-July. And Blair, tell us, where were your original plans putting you 10 days out from the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Regatta?
Yeah, it's certainly been a bit of a change around, hasn't it? I think we would have been in New Zealand right now, but pretty much ready to jump on a plane to Tokyo. So yeah, this year's been turned on its head for everyone in the whole world. And I think pretty quickly for us, our focus has really shifted and just sort of kept charging on from a cup point of view. But it's strange to think that we would have been in our final preparations to, for me, my 3rd Olympic Games right now.
I've been wondering this, Blair. You play a pivotal role in the Emirates Team New Zealand setup. A new class of boat is well into development, and the Cup is scheduled for the beginning of next year. I know how all-consuming an Olympic campaign can be. So with all that you've got on in your mind, how did you feel when the postponement of the Games was announced and became a reality?
Well, I think a bit sort of relieved, but probably not relieved in the way you'd think. Probably just like all of us sailors or all athletes, really, you like to have a plan and something to work towards. And, I think before the Games got officially postponed and then rescheduled to next year, was sort of in a little bit of limbo. And, for at least the last few weeks, I think the writing was on the wall that it was going to have to postponed. So when it finally did, I think you're a bit relieved there. But before then, we were pretty ready to go this year. And we had a great summer down here in New Zealand, winning world champs in our home waters, and then managing to back that up in Geelong was pretty awesome. So yeah, we had a good plan in place, a good lead into Tokyo. Had quite a bit to work on and to refine, but so in that regard, a bit gutted not to be able to keep pushing on, but we refocus and ready to sort of mount the attack for next year now.
Is it not the case that at 2021 games, though, it clears the schedule, I guess, for the America's Cup, and you can really focus on that along with Pete?
Yeah, it's meant that we've certainly, been able to spend more time here in New Zealand, and obviously we had the lockdown period in the middle of it where we were sort of, I was home at my place in Kirikiri up in the far north of New Zealand, which was actually quite nice to have a bit of a time off after a busy few years, but and then we've just been back into it and been very busy. But you just take it as it comes. You've got to play what's in front of you, and for us now, the Cup's the first big event, and if the games were going to be a gold medal hand down in 2 weeks, then we would have been ready for that too. So you got to play what you got and prepare the best you can.
We're going to take you back in time and start off the chat with some memories of London 2012. You teamed up with Pete Burling at a pretty young age, and the pair of you hit the 49er circuit with an eye on a medal. 22 years old, heading into the Games, your first Olympics, and you'd been training with the Aussies, Nathan Outridge and Ian Jensen. They were dominating the class at the time, multiple world champions. How nervous were you heading into 2012?
Well, it was certainly a pretty cool experience as a youngster, getting to go to the Olympic Games, and with it we'd set a pretty big goal 3 years out or 4 years out of wanting to win a medal for our country, and we got ourselves into a position in the last 2 years of our campaign to do that. I think it started off, I think our first World Championships together, we got 26th and then 17th, and then made a bit of a breakthrough at the Perth World Champs in 2011 where we got second, and then the ones right before the Games we managed to get second as well, both behind Nathan Goobs. So we went into the Games confident that if we sailed well, we would we'd be up in the mix, and we love sailing in Weymouth, especially on the North course there. It was a really cool place to sail. So I think we're more excited at the challenge rather than nervous at that stage.
As we've said, Nathan and Goobs were so dominant at that time, but you'd done all that training with them, and could you see a way that Pete and you could beat them? Could they be beaten? Yeah,
it's a really good point. I think you always race to win, right? You're never going to settle for anything but that. But I think going into it, we knew that they would probably have to sail badly, which you can. People do it at big events. They would, if we were to beat them, even if we sailed well. And as it sort of transpired, we sailed a great event, and so too did they. And the points gap between us probably reflected the levels we were both at that stage. So I think we walked away from that being very proud of our results, and as they should, very proud of what they done, because they sort of dominated that cycle and finished it off when it mattered. So that was that was cool for them, but we were stoked with our performance too.
What are your memories of that Olympic regatta?
Well, there's the racing on the North course, like I mentioned before, was pretty neat. Just how close the people watching were. The sailing itself, dead flat water, quite good breeze, is it's about as good as you can get, really. So I think we were secured of the silver medal before the medal race. So I remember that day pretty vividly. I think sort of went in by the course there and capsized the boats, and sort of just enjoyed the moment. So it was yeah, it was and then I think the other thing that stood out for us was Joe and Polly, who got the gold medal at that, and sort of seeing the national anthem, and and the girls up there on the top step of the podium really inspired us to want to be there for the next cycle. So I think those two were the things that stood out for us.
I mean, your first games, only 22, a silver medal. It's not too shabby.
Yeah, it was certainly pretty awesome. I think when we got back to New Zealand, it was the 100th medal that New Zealand ever won. So that was a nice little, thing that we get reminded of every now and again. I think it's on some beer bottle caps or something down here. So sometimes you get some photos your mates send you of that. So that's classic little thing in there too. But no, it was a great experience. It was, we returned home sort of, pretty sort of, I think just proud of the performance we put in the 3 years before or 4 years before it, how we'd grown as people, like say we were pretty young at that stage and younger when we first started the campaign at sort of 18 and 19. So, that really was the building blocks for us and the platform in which we sort of have, carried on, I guess.
Well, jumping forward to Rio, Blair, by 2016, of course, you and Pete had been signed up by Emirates Team New Zealand, but the pair of you, well, you had the top spot, didn't you? I mean, the Cup in Bermuda was scheduled for a year after the Games, and Team New Zealand were trying to bounce back from the trauma of the 2013 San Francisco loss. How distracting to an Olympic campaign was the limelight of leading the Cup?
Yeah, it was something that we sort of grew into, I guess, and learned about as we went, and it was certainly a bit of a rocky road of a campaign for Team New Zealand. And to be honest, and especially in the early years, we were away a lot. Like the Olympics was our prime focus, and Team New Zealand second. And now it's much more even how we sort of share the responsibilities. But back then it was all on trying to be the best we could be in the 49er. So and that carried on through. And obviously, as we got closer to Rio, we also got closer to Bermuda, and things started ramping up at Team New Zealand. But the timing of when we really pushed hard was from a sailing point of view, not a design. That was obviously much earlier, but from a sailing point of view was pretty nice. It was right after the Rio Olympics. So, our build up to Rio went pretty well. We managed to stay, I think, undefeated in all the major regattas right up until it. So we went into that with a lot of confidence and excitement at sort of what lay ahead of us, I guess.
I always thought, Pete had the top job on the boat, steering the boat. You were right there beside him. I mean, you were famous in New Zealand, and I've been to, particularly in Auckland, everyone knows about the Cup. It's always front page of the newspaper. How big a deal was that? And I guess how did your life change back home, trying to win the Cup and trying to campaign for gold?
Yeah, well, I think we'd deservedly sort of built up as we went through the 2012 Olympics, 2016 Olympics, and then onto the Cup stuff after that. But talking purely around the Olympic build up and all of that into Rio, we were very focused on that, and we were spending a lot of time overseas, a lot of time in Rio building up. So we were just heads, pretty busy boys, but we were just heads down on both those projects really. So you don't really, life wasn't really changing. It was just charging on as it had done for 4 years before that.
Well, you and Pete had a massive role in Rio as well, didn't you? You led the New Zealand Olympic team into the stadium at the opening ceremony. What was that like, and what an honour that must have been?
Yeah, that was without a doubt one of the proudest moments of our lives for sure. I think to have the opportunity to lead your team, your country into the opening ceremony, into the Olympic Games is, it's that feeling's beyond words really. And it was something that we, I think really helped us to lay the foundations for what was to follow in the racing. You know, I think we started about 6 days after that. But the opening ceremony just unbelievable, really. So yeah, and then to go on and put the performance down that we did in the racing was just capped off an awesome time for us in Rio.
How did you guys find the Rio Games? I mean, in my experience, the sailing venue is very often miles away from the rest of the games, and certainly from your experience in London, where sailing was down in Weymouth. I mean, how did Rio feel in terms of an Olympic experience for you and Pete?
Yeah, I think it was pretty awesome in Rio that we were, you know, in the heart of the city, really. And I think just with such iconic sort of landmarks all around, anywhere you sailed from, you could see them. And I think, you know, there's such a good crowd on the beach and all of that. It was an amazing experience. Obviously, ours is slightly biased, and you know, Rio will always have a special place in our heart because of the opening ceremony and winning a gold medal there. But that aside, I think it was a great Olympics.
Your record going into Rio was remarkable. Is it right that the last regatta you'd lost was at the Games in London? I mean, by Rio, you and Pete were multiple world champions mentally, going in into what could have been, venue-wise, a really tricky regatta. I mean, you must have been really pretty confident. Yeah,
we were certainly pretty confident going into there. You know, excited by the challenge that it was. We knew it was going to be a tough venue, that the conditions could be, you know, or could throw quite a lot at us. But it's, you know, if conditions are going to do that, then you want to be launching from the best platform you can, and we certainly had a pretty good record going into it. We you know, we had some tough times in some of the last training blocks in Rio, where we just had been prioritizing some sort of speed gear testing stuff, and had come unstuck in some racing, but that just made us a bit stronger, and just sort of you know, we were pretty quick to just focus on what the job would be for the Olympic Games itself. So that was only a real little speed bump, but it wasn't much, and we managed to get off to a pretty good start. I think 2 firsts on the first day, right under Sugarloaf. So yeah, pretty unreal.
When I won my first medal, there was all sorts of math to do out on the water. It was pretty close. I mean, an exciting way to win. But for you guys, well, there was none of that. Since the modern scoring system began, there has never been a more dominant display on an Olympic racecourse. The numbers themselves aren't really the point, but you won with races to spare, even taking into account a double points medal race, which, by the way, you also won. 43 points ahead of Aussies Nathan and Goobs. How were the two of you so very dominant in Rio?
Yeah, I think, you know, looking back, what we're most proud of is not necessarily the gold medal, but it's the performance we put down, you know. And when you go into any sort of competition, all you can do is, you know, do the best that you can, and that was a pretty complete performance by us. So I think that's what you walk away being most proud of, you know, to put a performance down like that when it matters most. So yeah, and I guess that score just is a sort of something that happens after the fact, but for us it was pretty awesome.
I know. But, you know, one design boat, everyone is in, you know, very, very similar boat. I guess for the sailors listening to this podcast, they're thinking, how can they be? It's not like you had you developed a gizmo or had different sails, or, you know, just why was your performance so much more, you know, better, so much better than everyone else's?
Well, lower or more first probably, and some lower scores. But no, I don't know exactly why. You know, it's something that you prepare the best you can over all conditions, and we got that. Actually, you know, the first few days of that event were pretty nice, steady 10 to 12 knot sailing, quite different than what we prepared for. But it's the whole thing in sailing, right? You never quite know what you're going to get. But yeah, it was as good of an event as we'd put together, and the people around us probably maybe didn't, and then at some stage they start just concentrating on the other medals, I guess. So you can't pinpoint one or two things.
And now, I mean, as we've discussed, Blair, an unscheduled year to wait before we get to Tokyo. I mean, realistically, how is that going to affect your campaign? I mean, again, 49er-wise, you and Pete are in pretty good shape. World champions in 2019 and in 2020, just before things all got a bit weird, winning your 6th 49er Worlds in Geelong. But another year now to wait, and obviously quite a bit on between then and now.
Yeah, it's certainly not the preparations for the Olympics that we thought. We were, like I said at the start, we were pretty geared up for this year, but yeah, it's the whole thing. You just got to take it in your stride, I guess, and refocus and reprioritize. And we're still very, very hungry to win another gold medal for New Zealand next year, and we're going to put a campaign together that puts us in the best sort of place possible to try and do that. But it's different than what it would look like if it was a 20 games. But it's another year although we've got quite a lot on, it's another year for us to try and get better. And we're actually out sailing this weekend for the first time in a while, so that'll be a bit of fun and some wintry sort of quite strong breeze conditions.
We can't go, Blair, without giving Pete a bit of a mention. As we said, the two of you paired up back in 2008, and you've dominated the class for much of that time. What's it like campaigning with Pete Burling?
Yeah, it's been an awesome journey for the two of us. Since we started when Pete was probably 17, I think, and to now we've had some pretty incredible life experiences, some amazing regattas, and the places that sailing's taking us has been great, I think. But yeah, I think it's just cool to do it with someone who like-minded and just very driven to try and be better and improve in the way we sort of do things, and race the boat, try and make the boat go faster, and it's just kind of how we attack everything. So it's a awesome journey and still going. So you don't look back too much at this stage when you're still charging on.
Well, thank you so much, Blair. I mean, as ever, it's been a pleasure, and all the very best for that other regatta you're also trying to win.
Cool. Thank you for having me on, guys. Yeah, no worries. That was fun.
Blair Tuke, Olympic 49er silver medalist in 2012 and gold medalist in 2016. And of course, America's Cup winner 2017. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our 6 inspirational Olympic stories. It was great fun making this edition of the podcast. So a huge thank you has to go to our 6 interviewees for their time and, of course, their honesty. Thank you, all of you. To Tim at Vertigo Films, of course, for once more pulling the whole thing together. As ever, a big thank you to Tim. And to you, dear podcast listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to have you along for the ride. And do let us know your thoughts on this edition. If, like me, you're missing the thrill of watching the Olympic sailing regatta unfold, then we do hope we've managed in some small way to fill the void, as we all look forward to Tokyo 2020 in 2021. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and sail safe, everyone.
This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Pressure coming here, pressure coming.
We're 1.5 below.
2 dives here, boys.
We're looking at 10.5 to 42.
This is Castle 1 standing by. Out.